This is a big agreement for the biggest state in the country and demonstrates all of our commitment to delivering Disability Care Australia in that state for 140,000 people with a disability in New South Wales. As with Tasmania, we have staff on the ground in Newcastle getting ready for the launch on the 1st of July. Moving to South Australia, we also have an agreement for the launch of disability care in South Australia. That was agreed last July, but between the Prime Minister and the Premier of South Australia. The way we're starting in South Australia is for little children. So starting with the 0 to 5s and then gradually increasing the age over the next couple of years. The Prime Minister and the Premier across South Australia, requiring South Australia to put additional funding in, just as New South Wales and Tasmania have, and of course the Commonwealth is committing funding to those states as well. We have staff ready to go on the 1st of July in South Australia to make sure that little children come into Disability Care Australia. And then to Victoria. We have a very large launch site in Victoria. In the city of Geelong and the surrounding areas, around 5,000 people with disability will come into Disability Care Australia from the 1st of July. We have an agreement with the Victorian Government signed between the Prime Minister and the Premier, the then Premier of Victoria, and of course we hope to get an agreement to full rollout in Victoria as soon as possible. Once again, in Geelong, staff on the ground, ready to go, and I've personally seen the office down in Geelong. It's all right in the centre of the city and, of course, a very important place for people with disability, a one-stop shop, a place for people to go and get advice and get their plans agreed. The reason I want to outline this is that today's announcement is really the culmination of an enormous amount of work by people with disability. The Commonwealth Prime Minister announced yesterday, of course, was the next step, the important step to add some funding security to, to the development of Disability Care Australia. But of course, the funding goes to make sure that we not only give funding security, we also have the legislation to establish Disability Care Australia already through the Parliament. I think this is very important for everyone to remember. It went through the federal Parliament after much discussion and negotiation with disability and carer advocates, with the states and territories, with providers over a long period of time. That legislation went through with unanimous support of the Parliament at the end of March. And I emphasise this because today we've seen from the Leader of the Opposition questions around eligibility for the scheme. Well, the Leader of the Opposition should read the legislation that he voted for at the end of March. The eligibility criteria for people to come into the National Disability Insurance Scheme is very clear in the legislation. It is not responsible to now raise these issues when you have voted for this legislation just over a month ago. Read the legislation, get on board, support the increase to the Medicare levy to give security to people with disability that there will be this funding source. Happy to take some questions.
Prime Minister, in terms of the non-levy component of the funding for the EIS, have you identified the source of that funding and will any of it be in the federal budget?
So we've been making long-term structural saves, the kind of saves that make a difference to the budget and grow over time. For example, we did that with the private health insurance rebate. So we are able to associate a number of these long-term structural saves with the other costs of disability care. We're happy to answer questions on that. What's the issue now, though, is whether or not there will be bipartisan agreement to the 0.5% increase in the Medicare levy. As I said in my earlier remarks, I would genuinely hope that there could be bipartisan agreement around something that is to people with disabilities now and in the future.
Prime Minister, have you lined up yet to sign up the other states to a full rollout of the National Disability Scheme that the Western Australia has determined wanted to
just in terms of who's signed up for the full rollout, New South Wales has signed up for the full rollout. Here in Tasmania, it's signed up for the full rollout. South Australia has signed up for the full rollout. The ACT has signed up for the full rollout. That means that we are still negotiating with Queensland, with the Northern Territory, with Western Australia and with Victoria.
So have you set a time when you are hoping to sign up with those other states?
We haven't set a deadline. We are keeping working in the negotiations. A number of those states are participating in launch arrangements. So they've said that we're happy to work with you to get the scheme launched. Everybody's still in the discussion about full rollout. Obviously, many of the premiers and the Chief Minister of the Northern Territory would be digesting the news from yesterday and what it means for their budgets, given we've said a section of the Medicare levy money would come through the fund to them so that they would get a grant equal to a quarter of what is raised.
You're not heading off to Western Australia or Northern Territory tomorrow?
Oh, look, I speak to premiers in a variety of ways, sometimes face-to-face in their state, sometimes by phone. We negotiate between officials, so it's not a question of that. I mean, it's a question of, everything we've done, including the agreement here, has been the subject of, patient, methodical work, month by month, word by word. That's how it happens.
Why make this an election issue when fundamentally because supporting the yes, if you could get it through, would be quite unlikely that would go again.
Well, you can't ask me that question. It's not a question for me. I would very much welcome it if, just like we had bipartisan support to set up disability care, there was bipartisan support for the increase in the Medicare levy. I would genuinely welcome that. I can't say those words of welcome now because we don't know what the opposition's position is. Now, to get security, we're talking about something that starts on the 1st of July next year and then would be there for the long term. To get that kind of security for the long term, you need bipartisan support, or you need it to have been very clearly articulated that that's what the Australian community wants. What I don't want to see is, the uncertainty that would come, including for the people we've met today, the uncertainty that would come. If this went through the Parliament, the opposition didn't support it, there's an election coming, if the government changes, will it be taken away? All of that uncertainty, all of that sort of, political tactics, that's not what this is about. This is about getting things right for the long term, and that's why I absolutely welcome bipartisan support that's forthcoming.
Sorry, Prime Minister, you suggested a moment ago, I think, that the coalition might support legislation for the levy.
Yeah, well, we don't know.
But then revoke that support.
No, I was putting two. No, well, let's clarify that because I don't want that standing as an interpretation of my remarks. That's not what I said. What I said is there's two ways of getting long-term security here. Bipartisan support, which I would very much welcome. If there is not bipartisan support, then the Australian people get to have their say in September. I'm not suggesting that the opposition would provide bipartisan support and then revoke that support. I'm not suggesting that.
The crossbenchers seem very supportive of this legislation, so, I mean, you need coalition support, aren't you planning to gain?
No. Well, listen to my words and just think about it in terms of security. We have a federal election coming up. If the opposition chooses to go to that federal election saying they don't support an increase in the Medicare levy, even if it went through Parliament now, then clearly, depending on the outcome of that election, it can be taken away. Well, it would be a lot of politics to put the legislation in, only then to have it in contest and potentially taken away. Let's do this once, do it right, do it for the long term. How do you get there? You get there with bipartisan support or it being very clearly said by the Australian people that they want it. Let's not put the people we've met today through the prospect that it's in and they think it's going to start and then it's taken away. Let's not do that to people.
Last question, guys.
When you refer to